Yeah. Yes, Vishwendra, if you could
Yes,
initiate it.
yes. So I welcome you all on the behalf of CLPR to our webinar on contemporary challenges in environmental law on the occasion of World Environment Day. I would first like to give, I would first like to request Professor Dr. Bharti, who is the director at CELPR, Center for Environmental Law Policy and Research, to give her introductory remarks. Ma'am,
Uh,
please, I
sure.
request you to address the participants.
Thank you. It is my privilege to extend a very warm welcome to our distinguished guests, Professor Meeta Singh, renowned environmental academician, and Professor Vajpayee Sir, eminent academician and Vice Chancellor, National University, Delhi. And of course, a very warm welcome to all participants who have joined across the country for the celebration of World Environment Day through this stimulating webinar. It's usually a day of plethora of promises, pledges, and proceedings that somewhat get eclipsed for the rest of the year. Let us be solemn in our resolve this time because there is no plan B or planet B, and we are neck deep in environmental crisis. The topic for today is contemporary issues and challenges pertaining to varied environmental problems. Just a couple of observations from my end. Environmental issues are both local and global in concern. For example, from chemical leaching into the soil to greenhouse gas emissions. So they are extremely varied. They're extremely also interconnected and interdependent across spatial and time dimensions. Research published by the journal Nature Geoscience has found that ozone, particulate matter, nitrogen dioxide, and sulfur dioxide pollution from China has been making its way to the west coast of the United States. The model of development that we presently have is extremely exploitative, consumerist, and wasteful. Disasters have increased exponentially in this century and are a threat multiplier. They are a superimposition on existing vulnerabilities and so have consequent fallouts for especially for developing countries. The much suffered subject of urban heat has presently come within the judicial radar of the Delhi and the Rajasthan High Courts, where an excessive temperature rise of beyond 50 degrees Celsius has has shattered records and has also resulted in many strictures that have come up. We find that there is a combination of science and technology that is presently relevant, as well as the branch of ethnoecology, which is going back to the roots, which is also relevant. The constructive role of all stakeholders, especially the government, corporate, and the individual, is imperative. I'm very hopeful that today's session would be extremely instructive and insightful. And I would request now our eminent Vice Chancellor, Professor Vajpayee, to give his introductory remarks. Sir, if you could unmute.
Yeah, just a minute, I'm trying.
Yes, sir.
Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Wonderful. So first of all, many thanks for inviting me to this very important gathering, and I take this opportunity to first of all welcome Professor Amita Singh as chief guest to this gathering and to address us today. I'm sure her presence, being a most prolific author in this field and a very active researcher, will enlighten us on various aspects of the environmental law challenges. And we are actually looking forward to hear you, Professor Amita Singh. And of course, my thanks to Professor Bharti and her team in the center to putting up all this together to commemorate the Environment Day today, uh, and to mark this occasion, the this event is being curated today. I have only to say that the aspect of climate change is actually becoming very crucial for all of us as we witness soaring temperatures around the globe. And I have recently heard UN Secretary General Antonio, saying that climate change is the defining issue of our time. Every day we fail to act is a day that we step a little closer towards a fate that none of us wants, a fate that will resonate through generations in the damage done to humankind and life on earth. And when he says so, he is actually, highlighting the climate emergency, which is the biggest economic, social, and environmental threat facing the planet and humanity today. And these climate linked disasters have almost doubled compared to previous 20 years. And in his report, the UN Secretary General has actually remarked about the inequalities within and between countries, with those contributing least to global emissions often experiencing the worst impact of the climate emergency. So we are actually in a very difficult situation because climate change has a very undermining ability to, to cause multiple disasters. But as we have to achieve the 2030 agenda for sustainable development, the concerted efforts are required in this direction. And it is about rewriting the global resource map for assets such as water, arable land, and energy while driving, migration, displacement, and instability. So transitioning to a sustainable net zero carbon world requires rapid system level changes, including in key sectors such as energy, food, and earth. And time and again, the challenges are mapped and the strategies are devised, but probably something is lacking in terms of dedication and effort in this direction. But key challenges remain that the current uh, strategy that we are deploying to mitigate the crisis are not enough because looking at the exposure and vulnerability of communities and individual and the stress on water and food security. So on our current trends, the world is potentially on track for a temperature increase of 3 degree or higher, as is said, and current mitigation efforts are actually insufficient. So this become a quite serious challenge. And also the investment in risk informed adaptation is also lagging. Besides that, the action to manage long-term impacts and residual risk is also inadequate. I can go on to say several other issues like investment and financial systems, which are not fit for the purpose at the moment. But I think the crisis that we are facing, that climate change and disaster are reinforcing inequalities throughout because vulnerability and inequality interact in a very vicious cycle. So disadvantaged groups suffer very disproportionately from the adverse effect of climate change, and which diminishes their ability to reuse and reduce their exposure, avert potential effects, cope, recover from climate and disaster impacts, resulting in even greater inequality. So there could be a lot of policy debate surrounding this matter, which should be considered by all of us. But I am happy that government of India uh, around this issue is taking very keen steps. But there is a long journey to go, and there is a big role on the part of academia and researchers to play. So this occasion should become a sort of point of departure to really stress and emphasize whether and do a very honest audit of our efforts, whether we are sufficiently investing ourselves in this direction or not. So I'll not really prolong my talk, as Professor Amita Singh is there to speak on this subject and to enlighten us more on this. I once again welcome you, Professor Amita Singh, and all other participants who are, I can see some 275 plus participants have joined this. So this is very encouraging for all of us, and I extend a very warm welcome on behalf of the National Law University to all present. Thank you from my
Thank you,
side.
sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir, so much.
Thank you, sir. I would now like to welcome Professor Amita Singh. She's the president of NDRG, which is an Asia Pacific Disaster Research Group. And she's currently a senior distinguished professor at the National University of Juridical Sciences in Kolkata. She's also a visiting professor at National Law University, Delhi. She was formerly a professor of law and governance at JNU for more than 2 decades. She has worked with more than 9 Australian universities. She has been an Australia-India Council Fellow. She has also been as a Monash Australian Fellow. She has been a visiting professor at Public Affairs Center of American University. Her research with the Government Innovation Center at the Ash Center for Democratic Governance and Innovation, which is at Harvard Kennedy School at Harvard University, has resulted in publication of 2 volumes of books. She has published many international research papers and books. Ma'am, I would like to request you to please address the participants.
Thank you very much. And thank you, Professor Bharti, for thinking of me for speaking on the Environment Day. It's a privilege to be at NLU and to be speaking on something which is crucially at the heart of every citizen in not just this country, but everywhere around the world. So thanks a lot. I really endorse this opening statement by Professor Bharti that, we do not have plan B. And as Professor Bajpayee said, I think these 2 points are going to be my starting point. He said we are in a climate emergency. And we really are. And, just link it to Article 21, right to life. How weak that constitutional right to life becomes when, we have this whole lot of climate frustration around us. What we cannot do and what we have lost out. We have no plan B, so we have nothing more to look forward to. We have to just pull the remnants across and build up a world which could be a bit safer. But I'm today not going to be talking about those issues in environment. We have well past that stage. I'm going to talk about something which is staring blank on us, and we are not even aware of the situation, and we continue to live a life that is, of course, as Professor Bajpayee said, very iniquitous. It is full of iniquities, not just intergenerational, intragenerational, but interspecies, between the species. This is a crisis time that one powerful species is also destroying the other powerful species to the extent of a genocide. It is happening within human race, not that human race is completely free of this dimension. It is happening within the human race, but it is also happening to the species. So if I have to share what is this genocide which is happening within the environmental discourse is an important thing, and I'm going to focus on that today. Taking back to, our era, when we entered colleges, environment was having some kind of a spiritual content. And what was that spiritual content? It was a spiritual content where, there were sacred groves, there were people ka ped, there was this Bargat ka ped, and, there was this worship connected to it. There were the Bishnoi community saving the black bucks, and tigers were important for the forest. And we were absolutely benign people to believe that government is actually doing everything to protect the spiritual content of our day-to-day life. It was very short-lived, because the scienticism was increasing in the society, and we landed up with another step, another stage of discourse on environment. You must have heard about Center for Science and Environment. And they were the ones who produced the first Second Citizens Report. Of course, Rajiv Gandhi wanted them to prepare some, citizens report on environment, because something was not really working out. The government had created a ministry, but, that 1986, the Environment Act was passed about 8 years after the ministry was created. And then they said, we don't know how to move forward because everything seems to be a problem. There were hazardous waste management, there was zoonotic contamination, there were this electronic Malba dumping in the water bodies. There's so much happening. There's agricultural crisis because huge amount of pesticide, insecticide was flowing through the fields. It was entering the bodies, human bodies. And, there were large number of villages in Punjab, and especially the Green Revolution villages, where the bodies of females were contaminated and they could not feed milk to their own babies. And this happened in Punjab. And then MC Mehta, environmental lawyer, one-man environmental brigade, as he was called during that time. Later, he got the Magsaysay Award for that. He put in the case against, he had this in Indian Council of Enviro Legal Action. And through that, he had put up this case that this contamination need to be checked. And then there was another contamination. If not the bodies of these females who were feeding their babies, the same umbilical cord connection, there was parallel umbilical cord connection in other species which were growing right next to these human beings. The cows, the buffaloes, they were given oxytocin injection to get more milk. And this oxytocin got transferred into human bodies. So the coming of the puberty was much faster, and there were damage to the brains and to various, body parts. Anyway, now this was stage which was mentioned in the Second Citizens Report as the stage of pretty trees and tigers. Why? Because there was this Project Tiger that was launched during that time. And Indira Gandhi had special liking for the Project Tiger, and she invested huge amount of money to save the tiger habitats so that, they could be, their numbers could be increased. And much happened during that time. And pretty trees, because people were learning to save the trees. Deforestation to a large extent was, of course, not stopped. It never stopped. But people were getting awakened to the idea that deforestation is very damaging because it is a destruction of a habitat. So there were lots of cases going to the court. Menaka Gandhi had put in 5-6 cases. MC Mehta was the standard lawyer for that. Kuldeep Singh was the Chief Justice at that time in the Supreme Court. And this trio was known for Pretty Trees and Tigers. Of course, Anil Agarwal, the author of the Second Citizens Environment Report, did not agree to their style. And there was this mutual conflict, ideological conflict within the environmental groups. There was this third group, Kalpavriksha of Ashish Kothari, that came up at that time, that looked into the farmer's domain, the land use, and how the land could be used more in a more environmental friendly manner. So this was the second stage. All these debates were coming up, but you see the scattering of the debate. Pretty trees and tiger syndrome coming down to agricultural crisis. And then the third stage emerged with greater clarity. That third stage was, of course, what happened in that third stage was something that Indira Gandhi had already mentioned in the Stockholm conference, that environmental crisis is a crisis of poverty. We are poor nations, so we are not able to take enough care of our environment because we have to look after how to feed these millions. So we have to get more land from the forest areas to grow food. So grow more food became antithetical to environmental conservation. So this third stage is a stage of socio-economic impacts, in which it was realized more than ever before that environment has serious, what Professor Bajpayee just mentioned, environment has more serious socio-economic considerations in its policy. And what are those socio-economic considerations? We are, of course, not talking about carbon credits in the global field. It's something on a smaller scale. That those who are using more energy, so the question of energy comes in, who are using more energy are depriving the others from wholesome environmental usage. Now, a large part, almost 70% of the society did not even have textbooks during those times as free textbook, free education. But more than that amount of paper that was going for the textbooks was used as toilet papers by the rich in this country. So what is this equity that ought to be coming into environmental policies? And so we see a little change coming in. So, the Coastal Zone Management Plan came up, then Public Liability Insurance Act came up. So 1992 onwards, we see some more change about socio-economic consequences of environmental policies. This was the third level of discourse. But then COVID-19 was like shutting up the whole debate on environment. They say, yeah, all of you are like kids. What are you talking about? This environment is well past. There is a bigger dragon waiting for you at the end of the tunnel. We are already in the tunnel. We have no oxygen to breathe. We have no trees. We have no housing. If there is a nuclear war, where are we going to go? Somebody said, go into the metro stations. How many of us can go into the metro stations? So the question that comes up. And that is a fundamental question that I'm going to focus upon in my today's discussion. Who will live? Now the question is, ask yourself, who will live when not everyone will be able to live? And that's a question, an important debate that goes around the world. Who will live when not everyone will be able to live? And COVID-19 actually brought to the surface this whole discourse, the underlying mischief of environmental policies were exposed. Now, one tree, what is the cost of one tree? Remember the Vasant Kunj case in which about 30 trees were brought down, and local resident association in around 2013 and 14, they had gone to the High Court. And the High Court, after 2-3 years of discussion, finally leveled the cost of a tree. And they said it is 45 lakhs per tree. And they imposed that cost of 30 trees multiplied by 45 lakhs to DDA, which DDA has not paid till today. After that, so many high courts and even the Supreme Court has calculated the cost of a tree. Now, you calculate the cost of a tree. One tree at your house gives oxygen to a family of 4 people for 2 years, free of cost, complete oxygen. How much would be the cost of an oxygen cylinder for 4 people for 2 years, non-stop, 24/7? You can calculate it. So there were some measures which were used by the High Court and the Supreme Court at that time. And for first time, the calculation was made in environmental terms. Now, coming back to COVID-19, the pandemic not only revived the debate on the cost of oxygen. It also revived the debate on the cost of the food we eat, on the cost of the lifestyles that we live. And ironically, a new debate comes in, which in short, I can say is a debate of speciesism. One species, the arrogant humans, are destroying every other species. And how this happens, this is a perceptual change in environmental jurisprudence. If you can put in my slide, can you put in my PPT?
Yes, ma'am. I'll share the screen.
Yeah. Half the fun would be gone if the PPT is not there. I have all the photographs there. So in an online lecture, PPT has a great role to play.
Ma'am, can you see the PPT?
Yeah. So the second slide, next slide.
Yes, 1 second.
Yeah. These are the 4 stages I've mentioned. And then the third slide. Now, this whole debate on speciesism that I'm coming down to, that the humans are destroying because of their power, all the other species on this earth. If you know the extinction rate that is happening on Mother Earth, we can say Vasudeva Kutumbikam, we can say one Earth, one future, and one family. But within our family, we have every year 1 million species endangered and getting extinct. And this is not for the first time. Next slide. And this is not for the first time. It's not that we are coming to it now. FAO, Food and Agricultural Organization, had disclosed it as early as 206. In fact, it came much earlier to that when Marvin Harris, this book, Sacred Cow and Abominable Pig, he had already mentioned that, millions of cows are slaughtered in a day and multi-million pigs are slaughtered in a day. And if you see the slaughterhouses where they are being slaughtered, there's huge methane gas, which is there. They're rich in methane gas. CFCs are all coming out of that. And if we just close down 50% of the slaughterhouses in this world, we will have no climate problem. The whole climate agenda would fall flat. People will not have anything to discuss on climate change. But I'm going to it in a different direction. Now, this FAO, Food and Agriculture Organization, had given a very scientific report, Livestock's Long Shadow. And this was by the top scientists, life scientists in the world, Stanfield and others, who had given this report. The first report, as I mentioned here in the PPT, Marvin Harris, and then third, environmental conservation. And the fourth one is actually very radical, and it came out as an outrage against the kind of capital industry which was controlling the food that humans were eating. And it is not just the Green Revolution which has destroyed the fields, but of course given food to everyone. But through the food, they have brought in a large number of multi-organ failure diseases in the human bodies. And this fourth report is very radical in the sense it talks about eco-terrorism and radical environmental and animal liberation movement. So, next slide. Now, our problem, we all know, my 2 earlier opening speakers have both spoken about the heat wave that we are suffering, the rising temperatures. It's beyond our control. This is something that we are not able to control. So what is it leading to? I remember when we were kids, there was very simple techniques. You carry an onion with you, or you have, some panna, the raw mango drink. And these were enough and sufficient enough to take care of the heat that was coming in. But in a crisis of today, we have a lot of things, including, the cosmetics that we use, the sunscreens that we use, the medicines that we take. Everything has a zoonotic content. And that zoonotic content, we are not even aware of every time we have that. And I'll just be coming to this. This zoonotic content, I'll explain in the next slide. But what is this content? The middle slide, which says zoonotic diseases. Human beings are surrounded by plethora and varieties and versatility of the animal world. And these animal worlds are in some way have a symbiotic relationship with human beings. It has been going on for ages that human beings consume meat, but that meat doesn't eat the human body out. It is a food. And people are consuming that for, decades and decades. So it doesn't affect the body as it is being affected in the world of today. Because of left side, pathogenesis. What is this pathogenesis? How are the animals becoming pathogenetic influencers, or they are passing on the diseases to human beings? And it's surprising that in one of the UNEP report, it said, this report came up in 2014. It said that 70% of human diseases are animal transferred. How is it that the same animal which shared a symbiotic relationship with human beings suddenly becomes a content for transferring viruses, damaging viruses, which are generally affecting the lungs and the cardiovascular system? In fact, all the viruses have, the scientific studies say they are mostly affecting the cardiovascular system. What is the legal question? When the zoonotic disease comes in, the first thing is the lockdown. As I mentioned on the right side, there is this lockdown. And why is there a legal question in the lockdown? Because the moment there is lockdown, there are questions raised on the democratic content of the society. Why? Because new laws are to be formed. Of course, during COVID-19, you remember that we re-implemented the Epidemic Disease Act of 1897, which was formulated during the bubonic plague in Mumbai in the early 19th century. And we had to relive with that act. So, one is that. The second is that human bodies have to be put into detention, and they are punishable. And they're punishable, surprisingly, if you look at the 1897 Act, they are punished under Section 188 of Indian Penal Code. Read 188, which is rather very stringent, how to detain a person and how to lock him out from the rest of the society or to punish him. And so these punishments and penal actions are mentioned in Section 188. For what? For disobedience, for causing danger to human life. These are like issues which have never been in public discourse earlier. So we have damaged the environment to that extent that we are now threatened with a system of political democracy, which we may not be able to sustain. Next slide. So in this scorching heat that we are living in, which is of course our creation, we have, brought down, deforested, that India has a landmass of 329 million hectare, and out of 329 million hectare, which it was at the time of framing of the Constitution, 1947, today it is 319 million hectares. Where is all the land gone? It's soil erosion. We have depleted the land masses. Somewhere, something is happening in which we are losing our land mass. If we lose our land mass, who will absorb the heat, the temperature, the water recharge shed? In 1911, there was this question where the Britishers came down to the villages, and because they had no idea about what they had to do, they looked at the degraded land. Every village had a part of degraded land, which was a panchayat land. They looked at it and they said, what do you call this land? The Usar land. Usar? Oh, degraded land. Oh, this is a degraded land. They said, no, it is an Usar land. So what is an Usar land? Usar land is animal teethering areas. Animal teethering areas means animals hangout points, the village animal hangout points. And they enrich the Usar land by teethering in that area. Somewhere these animals had place to go, and so that the methane content that we now are generating by clubbing and pushing all animals into small areas wasn't done at that time. So the Usar land was immediately, of course, it was non-cultivable, so it was given off for construction. It was given off for, of course, later on it was given off to builders. The same British policies on land use was used after, the 80s. And with the globalization period, the massacre of Usar lands and panchayat land and common property resources is an epidemic that nobody in the environmental group could save from. So this major crisis that happened has lost land, which was a recharge shed and which absorbed temperature. So now who will absorb temperature? Now temperature is being increased the kind of glasses which are being used in the multi-storied building. In Gurgaon alone in 2005 and 6, there was not a single bird. You know that Haryana is famous for its best birds, the varieties of birds. Not a bird looked towards Gurgaon. Why? Because they were not breeding here. They could not breed, their eggs did not hatch. And same thing happened with human beings, because in 2000, there was only one IVF clinic here. Today, there are more than 37 IVF clinics in this city, small city, because infertility is increasing. Not just it started with the birds. Birds were the early warning systems. It has landed up with human beings. It's a new epidemic that the world has to stare blank now. So, this is the degradation of land. In fact, the Usar land, which was taken away as useless land. And that useless land was the one that protected us. So I'm coming down to, how each element, the ugliest looking element in environment has been our breathing point. The land that was taken away was also the recharge shed for water. Because the water used to collect over there. All the Usar area, there was no grass, there were no trees, nothing. Animal teethering was only the thing that happened over there. But during the monsoons, they collected huge amount of water. They were like little ponds. And where did all the water go? It didn't evaporate. Not everything evaporated. It went inside. And there were 10, 20 meters of rise in the water, the water, groundwater table. And today, in just last 2 years, in the NCR region, which includes Faridabad and Gurgaon and Delhi, the water table has sunk in just 2 years. There was this study made by Atal Jal Sansthan, and it has come down by 45 meters. Can you believe it is suicidal? 45 meters. Even if there were battles going on, the RWAs and all, they hear out the DLF that you have created all this problem. This was just a fortnight back. And DLF said, we are going to install the bore wells and take out water. The GMDA official sitting next to him said, bore well may not be enough because the water table is much deeper. So you'll dig a well, a bore well will take 6 months if that deep is the groundwater. So where is water? The serious crisis, it's already happening. You've seen Bangalore. The most posh areas, swanky areas of Bangalore have people coming down from the multi-storied with buckets of water, standing outside with the tanker, carrying those buckets inside. Have you seen anywhere in very swanky, so-called swanky areas that the developer would ever say that in 10 years from now, these high-scape towers are going to turn you into this, pedestrian laborer? You'll have to carry your buckets of water to the 8th floor, to the 20th floor, and this is happening. And this is very soon. In 5 years, this is going to happen in Gurgaon, in Delhi, all these multi-story apartments. Energy is going to die out and things. I'm not talking about as a prophet of doom, but this is something which is again staring blank. And all these big SUVs, cars, which are running on the streets today, this is, just like telling the stock market that buy all the stocks today because tomorrow your stocks will increase. So everyone buys it. So all these automobile companies are giving big rebates and discounts on the cars so that you buy all the cars. So tomorrow, when they come down with the electric cars, nobody would you get to, purchase your car, which you have. And this is going to impact very hard, in a very hard manner, to the middle class, of course. And the poorer classes are already on the suffering point. But the good thing about the poorer classes is that they're not too distanced with the ecosystem, even though much of the ecosystem is already lost. So coming down to the third part of my lecture, if we have a situation like that, the pandemic that we faced, we have serious zoonotic problem. I'll come to the consequences of the causes and the consequences of the zoonotics in the later slides. But I'm just initiating a thought process that if we have something like COVID-19, where there is a lockdown, we are not able to get things that we need. The medicines, the pharmas, and many of the things we are used to using may not be available in the market. The country may not get its supplies because the global supply chain is completely disrupted. How would you live? Goods and services would be stopped. Tourism is stopped. The philanthropy the international NGOs are doing would be stopped. What are we going to do? So the international organizations have already, thought of it. And in the GATT agreements of 1994, they have put in a legal framework for phytosanitary measures. That if such a situation comes in, a country can prevent the other country to sell goods to them, and they will also prevent themselves from selling the goods. Now, it's all about ethics. Some countries, to sell their goods, may not really reveal that something is going on over here, as it happened in China's wet markets. It is more than obvious that the reports were clearer on the fact that the wet markets were the creator and the disseminator of COVID-19 virus, coronavirus. But yet the supplies from China continued for a fairly long time. It had come up in September, and this was a big debate. It has come up in Lancet Journal also, in some of the key articles that were there, papers, research papers. It was more than obvious in September that something is coming in, September 2019. But the measures from our government could only be taken in January. And in January, they were just little bit about the visitors, the thermal screening of the visitors. It actually started on the 18th of March. So that means from September till March, coronavirus had a honeymoon period. It was spreading. It was allowed to spread because there was no complete information available. And here is where I'll come to the point that regional pacts become very important, and also the individual contracts that go between various parties. And these individual contracts are, again, very important, like two companies getting into a contract. And if one country feels that the company feels in one country that there is a kind of imminent crisis which can be seen, they can break the contract under force majeure. And this is force majeure, of course, was earlier when it was created. And, in that famous book by Pollock and Mullah, they very well mentioned that this was for war, inundation, and epidemics, but nobody thought of this kind of an epidemic world that we are now witnessing. And under this force majeure, several notifications were passed during the coronavirus period by the Ministry of Finance, and surprisingly by the Ministry of Finance and not by the Ministry of Law. So this is something that is visible change in the new environmental context. Next slide. And this is the next slide is the most powerful and important slide that expects a lot of introspection from environmentalists. Now, this is about there are many.
Just give me a second.
Yeah, please. There are many factors that affect the spread of zoonotics, epizoonotics, the various kinds of viruses, and how these viruses, the pathogenesis of the viruses is spread, and how they affect from animal bodies to human bodies, from trees to animals to humans, how this whole pathogenesis is created. But it is all within the environmental range, and we have done it. It's not an act of God. It's the sixth slide.
Yes, ma'am, I'm coming to that.
Yeah, sixth slide. Yeah. Can you make it full screen?
Yes.
Yeah. Now look at that. There are many reasons for the spread of zoonotics, but environmentally, there are 4 basic reasons for the spread of zoonotics. And this is happening very close to us. The first is habitat fragmentation. The Sahyadri range, the Uttarakhand, everywhere from the forest, there are roads being built. And in fact, the tiger areas are also I've written a lot on that in the newspapers. And there are tiger areas which were prohibited under the wildlife. Now, those tiger areas can also have, guest houses, government guest houses, or office spaces for urgent and emergency measures. So, this fragmentation, habitat fragmentation. Now, nobody thinks that, if you talk to a policymaker, he would say, we still have, 1,000 hectares. How much more would a deer need? How much more would an elephant need? And so they have their railway lines from middle of the forest, and almost every day one or two elephants are dying in the Assam and Bangdwar region, where the railway lines have been passing through the forest areas. And in Uttarakhand, the major crisis is that when you wake up in the morning, you go out, you have to see if there is no panther or leopard sitting around, because they've all started coming. The man-animal conflict has increased. Why? Because there is not enough prey inside that forest area. Forest area is a very sustainable food area for the animal. We are decrying completely the availability of food areas to the animals. And we look at it as a capital intensive investment. This is a forest and we have a road passing through it, so the tiger can cross the road and go into the other side of the forest. But this really doesn't happen. As conflict has increased, animosity against animals has increased, and let's say that even if it has not increased, the zoonotic spread of the virus has come very close to human beings. And there are nature has provided zoonotic viruses, and at the same time, animals to prevent and eat out on those zoonotic viruses. There is little scientific research happening on that. There's more scientific research on the creation of the zoonotic elements. But there are a large number of animals which are absorbing the viruses and making them immobile before it reaches the human systems. And that is the reason why animals and humans had a symbiotic relationship in the past. But today, this relationship is dying out because habitat fragmentation has also resulted into species fragmentation. The habitat has resulted into a separation of. There's a hand raised by Dr. Vandini Sharma. Yeah, you have something to say? Or that was an accident? All right. So this is one. The second is species extinction and biodiversity. We are not even realizing, when we lose animals in the forest for lack of water, lack of prey, lack of food, and lack of appropriate habitat. But even in the cities, the huge amount of slaughtering which is taking place, the death at the roadside, or even, the cows, the dogs, the cats, these are ordinary animals. But even their destruction has increased immensely. The livestock population in the Ministry of Agriculture report has come down from 12% and likely to come down further in the next 2-3 years to 18%. That's a huge fall in the livestock population. In the dog population and in the domestic environment, stray animals that you say in the communities, which are the community animals in the villages and in the habitats, human habitats, there's almost 50% decrease. And yet there is a menace of dogs and menace of animals in the cities. Why? Because they are very close to us. They need not be close to us because their habitats have been destroyed. And there is this crisis has led to a crisis of genetic resources. We are losing genetic resources, and the latest report says that the genetic resources have been lost by almost 50%. No, they have been lost by almost 1/4 and likely to be lost to 50% by 2050. And if we lose genetic resources by 2050, I only have to relate yourself to one incident that happened in America many years ago in the 60s. You know that Americans were only growing tomatoes and potatoes at that time. The scientists, the botanists, they had gone to the Amazonian forest and got a gene out of a berry that was growing next to the Amazon River. That berry gene was inserted into the tomato to give the tomato a longer shelf life, so it becomes really most appropriate saleable item in the open market. Because the farmers thought that they could keep that without refrigeration and save a huge amount of money. But that year, a strange thing happened. There was a complete wilting of the tomato crop. How did this happen? The scientists were, of course, held accountable for that, and they had to go back to the Amazonian forest in 2 years' time. In 2 years, they found that all that Amazonian forest where their rare berry was growing, that shrub wasn't there, because complete deforestation of the Amazonian forest on that side of the river had taken place. They had to look for alternatives, and finally they found something to escape that disease that killed the crop for farmers, and it was huge amount of capital loss for the farmers during that time. Same thing might happen in the history of genetic resources, the way we are losing the genetic resources. Tomorrow we may not be having medicines to save our own people. The third is the intensive livestock farming. We don't even realize that how the livestock are rushed into. I visited the farmers, the biggest of the farmers in the Bellingham area, the rural areas of Australia, on a small farmer study. And there, most of the rich farmers' families, the girls and boys who were studying in very high universities in Australia, they were all vegetarians. I said, very surprising. Your father is doing a business of sending cows to the slaughterhouses every morning, and you are vegetarian. And you are conserving these animals, sheep and goat. They took us to their farms and said that beautiful cows and very beautiful terrain. And they said that we have seen it closely and that is why we want it. Every morning, they said, the trailer trucks lined up and almost 1 lakh of cows were stuffed into the trailer trucks to be taken to the slaughterhouses. Imagine the biological consequences of it. I will come to the trade wars which have led to major cases before the WTO Dispute Settlement Board and before the International Court of Justice. The beef wars that took place between two countries, America, South Korea, America and China. And South Korea was like a hyena, washing its hands on both the sides because they were the suppliers through, the third-party supplies. So this trade war is a crisis which is overlooking something which is happening at the grassroots. And in Australia, there was a major movement against this kind of factory farming which was taking place because it was taking away very rich resources from humans to animals who were slaughtered in a day and were consumed only by people who could pay more for food because beef is not cheap. Only those who have the money could buy it. But amount of land which was transferred from human food to animal food. Now, I'm only talking about, 9 lakh cows are slaughtered every day in the world. And a cow is, say, about 2 meter long. If they stand in a row, the Food and Agriculture Organization warned that the queue that they would create would be 1,800 kilometers long. In one day, the world is consuming 1,800 kilometers of cows standing in a row. Nobody realizes, the kind of mischief that the capital markets are doing on clueless humans. Chickens, 202 millions, which is 140,000 per minute. 140,000 per minute. Big fish, 150,000 every minute. And ducks, 12 million. So now, 3.8 million pigs. All these animals are grown over our land. The issue is you may eat what you want. You may create what you want. But the fact is that inequity which is there at the poor farmers level is enormous because they are transferring their land from human feed to animal feed. Today, if you go to the villages in this country, which was considered to be दूध दही का कृष्ण जी का देश है, दूध दही की नदियां बहती हैं. If you go to the villages, even in Punjab, you will not find milk to be given to the child of the farmer. They don't have milk to be given to their own children. There are women who are pregnant, and when the doctors go and tell them that you should have rich diet, they said, where is the rich diet? We are not growing vegetables. We don't have cattle. All the milk that comes in, the gadi comes in the morning from a milk factory, and they take away all our milk. And we have signed a contract for our survival that we are going to sell them this amount. So if the cow is not able to give that amount, they have to insert oxytocin to create that amount, because they are in contract to supply that amount to them. So the life of a cow or any cattle, livestock, decreases by 50%. So the cow that gives milk till 18 years may just give milk till 9 years. 9th year, it may just be earlier to that. It's happening earlier to that, as my studies reveal. It's happening much earlier to that. 6th and 7th year, they are packed off to slaughterhouses or to leather companies. And there's another contract which takes place for doing this. But the huge amount of land once gone for growing feed for the animals cannot be recovered. What happened to Argentina? Argentina, Americans, the hungry Americans, the McDonald companies, they had gone to Argentina. Argentina had one of the richest rainforests, and they said that we want your grazing grounds here. And because they were getting business, they immediately turned the forest, deforestation took place. Same thing happened in Indonesia also. They immediately deforested. And then today the Argentinians are reeling into poverty because the forest was more holistic employment than growing food for the animals. So, but this is one side of it. The biological side of it is that the CFCs and the methanes and toxins which are released and the zoonotic elements which are released, we have no shields to absorb that, because we have huge habitat fragmentation. The toxins are released in a capacity much, much higher than the absorbent capacities of nature. Nature is fragile, it's weakening. Bush meat trading, that's another thing, which are the wet markets. Earlier, the tribals used to go and hunt in the bushes and eat their food. That was okay, because it didn't involve extinction of a race. But now you go to the wet markets of Hunan, which created the coronavirus spread, or to any of the wet market. There are other wet markets in Brazil also. There are wet markets in Europe also. You go to the wet markets, and I'm sure there are some within India, because India is never left behind. So there are some in India also. And these wet markets are creators of the toxins, the viruses, which are unleashed in the environment. And they are easily coming to human beings. And, I'll mention a few of them here. Hantavirus, nobody knows that, but Hantavirus was, one of the major crisis area, which happened in Brazil, but it started from, South Korea. How this happens, you'll be surprised, because if you kill rats, you eliminate rats, you create a virus that rat absorbs. Coronavirus was a virus that they said was coming from bats, but later it turned out to be that the bat was actually the savior. It was a shield against the coronavirus. And because the bats were killed, so the coronavirus immediately affected the human body. And we have a number of such animals in the environment which are dying out, which are becoming extinct, and human beings are standing, vulnerable, unprotected, face to face with a virus against which they have no medication. They have no enough knowledge also. So now I come to the last slide. How do you handle this situation? In 1994, GATT had put in rules that members have a right to take sanitary and phytosanitary measures necessary for prevention of diseases spreading from animals to plant life to human health. But even at that point, they never realized what they were talking about. Epidemic of what? Quantum. And in national governance, we had only this Izzat Nagar in Bareilly, National Center for Disease Control, Directorate of Health, ICMR comes in only in coronavirus time, and coronavirus is not new. Almost every virus seems to be a coronavirus. It's been here, the SARS virus and the swine flu. They've been here for many decades, but now it's in a very attacking mood because our shields are gone. So we have Directorate of Health and ICMR for the first time coming in and talking about this transferring of viruses from animals to humans. And for the first time, taking seriously the law that was brought into the SPS measures, sanitary and phytosanitary measures, I'll call it the SPS measures, that they mentioned that there must have been a risk assessment and a scientific basis if any country wants to stop purchases from the other country, or they want to stop their exports to another country. Because GATT is there for equitable business, non-discriminatory business. And if by using SPS measure, any country becomes discriminatory, it can be a dangerous omen. And this has been happening. The famous cases, of course, beef hormone war in 1989 between US and European Union, where, US stopped the beef from European Union, and European Union was crying hoarse. Finally, it went to the WTO conflict resolution, and they found that the fears of US were, not really standing on points of laws. But in any case, there were opinions given on the other side also, and they said we do not have enough scientific evidence at this moment. But later on, the scientific evidence did come up, and the SPS measures today are very effectively growing between in the supply chain of exchange process. There's another very famous dispute that came before the WTO, the Korean radionucleotide, which is called the Fukushima case. They stopped foods from Japan, saying that, it has the radionucleotide contamination, and they would not be buying it. And there was a huge war that took place, and ultimately it did stand the scientific evidence and it was stopped. So risk assessment and scientific basis is becoming important. Now the question arises, how much effective scientific research we have in our country to protect our citizens from implementing SPS measures? We have, coronavirus time has proved that we have none. If I can't say none, because scientists may get angry on that, but we have very limited and we have very fragmented. Scientists are working in their silos. There is no holistic approach to addressing the problem of the virus epidemic, because it needs social scientists in equal measure. It needs legal experts in equal measures, because if such a situation arises, are you only going to serve them science? No, you can't throw the pill in their mouth. You also need to have socio-economic measures to prevent the spread of the crisis. We have not till today have any holistic approach to that, even in the National Disaster Management Authority, NDMA, which is headed by the Prime Minister in this country. So this is one. The second is more interesting. What is the global governance about the spread of zoonotic diseases? We have WHO, which from 1994 has been consistently, since the publication of its report, has been consistently warning. It's like an early warning against the spread of intensive agriculture, intensive livestock factory farming, which is going on. It's been warning people that these zoonotic spread of diseases may be beyond the control of natural environment. And this can lead to the extinction of the human race itself. So the World Organization of Animal Health, which is now WOAH, but earlier it was, IOA. So, this has brought out several researches. If anyone wants to go deeper into it, they can look into the environmental spread of zoonotic diseases and how and what kind of an environment could actually prevent the spread of this. And it's all the natural environment. As Professor Bharti said in her opening point, that we are returning to the traditional method. We have no plan B. We can only go back and revive our traditional systems. And if we are capable of doing it, we'll be better placed and stronger human race to control the spread of zoonotics. Then the Center for Research on Epidemiology, this is CRED, and National Intelligence Council has a lot of role to play. There are some non-state actors also which are doing a great job. The Bill and Melinda Gates, of course, are there. But besides that, the Codex Alimentarius International Office of Epizoonotics, they look after the fundamental standards of what kind of a food could be worthy enough to be consumed. And if they have a codex standardization, then the food could be passing through the SPS controls. But if codex says that there are problems, then it will have to go to the laboratory of life scientists for further testing. Now, this is environment. We are not talking about pretty trees and tigers, because we have created such a fuzzy earth system today that everything is very close to us. And because everything is so close to us, we cannot escape the dimensions of taking. We have used other species for our benefit for many, many years. Now the other species are, the power of the ants. It's like power of the ants, and they are standing up against the human race because, the destruction has gone beyond the natural limits. We have lost shields that could protect us as human bodies. The only solution left is that we go back to the traditional systems and try our consumptions to be as nature-based as much as possible, to be as organic as possible, so that inequities in agriculture could be removed and inequities surfacing in human life and capital markets could also be resisted against. So I think I'll end up with that, and we'll discuss more if questions come in.
So,
thank you very much.
Ma'am, if you have the time, I have a couple of questions.
Yeah, sure.
So, ma'am, one thing you said that when you were talking about trees, that the government has ascertained the price of a particular tree.
Yeah.
And even though the court has said that it should be paid by the DDA, but the payment has still not been done.
Yeah.
Now, ma'am, even I have seen there are a lot of cases which have been decided by the NGT. They have given the judgment, but those judgments are not implemented on the ground.
Yeah.
And things just linger for years and years. So in that scenario, should we give more powers to NGT, or what could be the solution?
That the one problem which we always faced is right from the beginning is, and there has been no amendment which has been made in the NGT Act. NGT has no teeth. Let's accept it. It has got no teeth. It can go, on appeal in the Supreme Court. And this is what is happening. And so the cases are lingering. Do you know something? Taj trapezium case. All the students here, mostly from law, teachers here, everyone must be thinking that the Taj trapezium case is over and the pollution case is decided upon. The forest area around the Taj would be restored. That case is still lingering on. The last month, there was the date for the Taj trapezium case. MC Mehta was there. The other party adjourned it. And now there is only one person. Many of the what do you say, the plaintiffs, petitioners, not plaintiffs, many of the petitioners have died. There's only MC Mehta standing on one side, the other side adjourned. So what happens to law is really, because it's totally an unaccountable domain, because there is so much happening in law and the judges are accepting it. Now, I'm not criticizing judges or, the kind of judicial system that we have, but definitely we need a little more proactive judiciary. But how can the judiciary be proactive? It can be proactive if, there are experts along with the judges. See, we can't blame the judges because it's a very difficult domain. They are sitting from 10 o'clock in the morning to 5 o'clock with 1 hour of lunch. That's it. And the bench generally gets up by 4 o'clock or 4:30. They have to come back again midnight if wanted. And when they go on leave, Supreme Court bench, and the others get only 15 days or 1 month leave, then people are upset because the cases get pending. But imagine the task of a judge. Every day he's living in that city, because I'm now an advocate, so I'm taking cases on environment in the district court. That poor judge is there. And on the other side, every day, that single judge is having to face the commissioner, deputy commissioner of the city, district, town and country planner, commissioner, municipal corporation, divisional forest officer, and the police commissioner. How can you expect a poor district judge to be facing all of them? Because ultimately he's a citizen. He has to go back in the city. Next day, JCB can come and, break his house. How much are they protected? But we still have very good, brave judges, and I've got a very good experience from the district judiciary. But every day when I go, I keep my fingers crossed, because I keep thinking that judge may turn around and say that, no, this is not possible. So scientific evidence is important. In one of my latest cases, the judge used it because I was insisting on that there must be a scientific evidence to really push up and, strengthen your conviction to give a judgment in favor of environment. And he asked me, yes, I'm talking about it. I'm sending the Tehsildar. But then something further came up, that there must be a drone-based photography of that area, which is where the deforestation is taking place, where the mining over the Aravali is taking place, and where illegal constructions are coming up. Because if it is a drone photography, and in drone photography also, it's not only one kind of drone photography. If I ask any drone photographer to come and do the photography, there are so many film photographers which we have. They may go and give you that, but there are special drone photographers for the land, where the area of the land comes in, and there is a mathematical calculation that takes place in the court, and there is a formula for that, on the basis of which the destruction of the habitat of a particular species is in discussion.
Okay, so ma'am, it's a spatial type of photography, not a normal drone you can use.
Yeah, it is little ahead of the, it is a drone photography, but it is a photography that is used in land photography, land measurement.
Okay.
Yeah, even I didn't know about it till I got into the court and I realized that this is to be done. So many things you learn when you stand in front of the judge, and your whole academics is under question, because on the ground the situation is quite different. And there's another thing to that. There is, and this is one basic aspect to environmental conservation. If you don't have it, you cannot fight your case. And the second part will also come in. I'm expecting that GIS for the water tables, what was there 1 year ago, because the DC and all these big people standing in front of the judge, district judge, will not leave the district judge. They will continuously, and as a citizen, you expect, oh, we are doing such a good work, it's in national interest, and all these authorities should be supporting us. Why should they support an illegal builder over there? Ironically, they support the illegal builder. They have given a shield to the illegal builder. And this is what the situation is, why we have floods in Chennai and why we have no water in Bangalore. It's all because the water channels are disrupted. The aquifer, the biggest aquifer that we had over here, from Ghitorni to Kalusarai to Yamuna, is disrupted, completely gone.
But ma'am, on water tables, all these policies they have been developed by the CWGA. That you cannot have submersible pumps. The industries are not, even sugar industries in Western UP, they are not allowed to have submersible pumps without permission.
Yeah. Right? Yes, absolutely true in theory. But whereas now, for my latest case, I'm exactly talking about, the residents are talking about, that the water bodies have been covered with malba and with construction material. The disruption of aquifer has taken place. I go to the court. Where is the CWG? CWG is become like a disaster manager. They only come in when the floods are, so that they can give the speech, yeah, we said this and this. The enforcement power of all these authorities is completely missing out, and we need a serious change of laws in Environmental Act, that these authorities should be made responsible till we, the RTI Act. Why the RTI Act was successful? Because individual liabilities. We have no individual liability. A district magistrate today will sign the documents for the disruption of all the aquifers to the builder, giving extra land and construction over the ponds. And then he gets transferred and he retires. And then something comes up. The next district magistrate would say, oh, the previous one must have done it. Where is the liability? They are all washing their hands off. Till we do not amend the Environment Act to this individual liabilities, it will not come. I've been consistently writing about individual liabilities in Environment Act.
So at least, ma'am, at the domestic level.
So Vishwendra, I think there are lots and lots of questions which are there in the minds of everyone. And I think the participants, it's been, ma'am, an amazing session. And I think I'm voicing everyone's thought here that we couldn't have had a better resource person as yourself. And I'm so glad and I'm so happy. And thank you so much profusely that you have taken out time to give such a spellbinding lecture to all of us. It's been amazing in that sense that you're a reservoir of knowledge. And I think sometimes, I feel there is persons also, they are like national treasure. And there is a need to recognize the eminence of stalwarts, and you are certainly one of them. And thank you again. I don't know, ma'am, you're there? Have you left or?
No, I'm here.
Right now. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. So, ma'am, what we can do is that if it's okay, that we could send you the queries of all the participants. And I would request the participants to put in their questions, as part of the feedback form, or even, in the chat box if you'd like to send it. And we would be sending it to ma'am, and I'm sure she would be reverting to us, with all the the kind of responses which are there. And I think, ma'am, if there are in any other way you'd like to wind up this session, then it's all yours, the platform. Yeah.
Thank you so much for such a generous, closing. And Bharti, you can share my email with the participants. They
So,
can write to me.
yes.
They can write to me on anything on
Absolutely.
environment if they want to be part of the smaller campaigns that we have at any point, and we would be happy to join up with them.
Sure, ma'am. I would just
I will really try to reply to everything that you write. It may be delayed, but I will. Thank you very much. Thank you for
Thank
all
you.
the
thank
Thank you,
you,
ma'am.
ma'am, so much. Thank you again. And if you could note for everyone here present, it is Vishwendra, if you can just type it,
Yes, ma'am.
Amita, AMITA dot SINGH 3@gmail.com.
Yes, ma'am.
So now everyone has access to ma'am, and they can directly send their queries. And I'm sure she's going to. I mean, it's such an interactive session that we had today. I wish there was more time, for many more questions, and I'm hopeful that in the future we would be having ma'am constantly with us, to guide us and to, so that many more events can be organized and we would have the same participants and many more. So I would also be I would like to thank all the participants who are here in such large numbers. And I think the feedback form has been provided to you. So kindly just just fill it up and send it to us. And I'm really sorry about the lack of time for the questions. But this was a shorter
get
session.
back to me.
Yeah, but and you can directly send your queries to ma'am. So thank you again, ma'am, and
Thank you.
a very wonderful World Environment Day to all.
Thank you and bye everyone.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Vishwendra, and thank you to all the participants. Thank you.